Welcome. This is Chip Roasting.
I'm Wally.
I am somebody. I'm Brennan. I'm not Brennan. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. We're roasting some chips.
Hello.
Hello.
It has been some
Hola.
not just with us and RJ, just in general. And the only reason it's been less time than it was because I uploaded the last podcast 3 weeks late.
As you should.
Which is good because it added, gave you guys something between this amount of time. And not a had a TV show. And that TV show we will not be talking about today.
There is something weird with your audio.
Is there?
Coming through for me now. I don't know if that's true for RJ or not. You're kind of cutting in and out. This is Zoom's revenge. It's like you didn't. There we go. That's perfect. Sounds crystal clear, not loud and booming at all. There we go.
No screeching.
It's just Zoom's revenge. Zoom was like, I thought I got rid of you guys. Guess I didn't.
It's Montezuma's revenge.
That's a good one.
But yeah, there's a Marvel stuff that we probably could have been covering, but we weren't. Brennan moved. I moved. RJ still in space.
Yeah.
They've not let him move.
They got me working now, though.
Oh, do they? Do they pay you a fair wage?
No. I mean,
well, that's just one thing you and the writers have in common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm trying to take a book out of their page, a page out of their book. I'm sorry. Wow. And
you know what? Sometimes these pages be having small books. You know.
Yeah, that's true. I'm trying to
read between the lines.
I want to start a union with the other abductees here, but we'll see what happens.
The union of abductees.
Yeah.
Well, good luck to you. Maybe you'll have a little bit better luck than at least they're giving you a home. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the writers' strike, they want them to stay out until they have no home. So I mean,
right?
Could be worse, RJ.
Could be a lot worse. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
But we're gonna backlog ourselves because last we talked, I still hadn't seen Black Panther or Ant-Man 3. I have now since seen them, and I have seen Into the Spiderverse and Guardians 3. But we talked about Guardians 3 last time.
But yeah, one quick side note here about us for the most part being in different locations. Yeah, I had all my stuff packed up in boxes here, moved somewhere else for like the half hour prior to this call starting. I was like, where is the microphone that I always have in front of me during all of these calls? Looked everywhere, looked in all the boxes, could not find it. Finally just gave up, sat down in here. This was like 3 minutes before things start. I look directly to this side of myself, and in a clear plastic bin in the closet, I see, lo and behold, just chilling over there.
There we go.
It is here. It is back. We got it.
There we go. That's all that matters, right? Who cares if we're here, as long as the on-air mic is here?
Yes.
Because it's totally a real mic.
On the air.
Totally.
100%. And this is why you could not hear me at all before. Hey, Wally in editing, please just mute me up until when I pull this mic out in front of me. That's why you couldn't hear me before. And now you can. Because this
away
is
from the mic. Into the headphone. That's totally not a mic.
No. This is purely for decoration here.
Yep. He doesn't even have it plugged into his computer.
No.
But anyway, so let's back. So what do you want to start with?
I think Black Panther came out before Ant-Man 3, right?
It came out in December. We're talking about it at the end of July.
It came out in November, I think. So that's not horrible. We're only like 8 months behind. Yeah.
We used to be so on this shit. Remember,
who needs anything topical nowadays?
Remember, we used to go through each and every episode of the Bad Batch, like almost frame by frame.
I am so sorry. That was more than 3 weeks ago. I have no memory of that whatsoever.
That's okay. But anyways, okay. So Black Panther.
Yes.
Sorry, Black Panther 2, not the Rise.
Wakanda Forever.
Wakanda Forever.
Wakanda Forever.
The Rise of Wakanda. No, that already happened. That happened
The
prior to movie one.
the fall of Wakanda? Question mark.
I mean,
They were
you could
definitely
kind of
teasing it that
see,
way, weren't they?
yeah, they were they were making it seem like it was supposed to be like a whole lot worse than it actually was, but
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
So, what's the overarching thoughts? Was this movie, and this is probably a loaded question, was this movie as good as Black Panther?
no, not at all. I
Yeah,
don't think so, at least.
No,
yeah.
I agree. RJ, why were you so quick to say no?
Because of the villain mainly.
Mhm.
They I had the same
Interesting.
thing. So this is not at all a gripe with the movie that I have. This is more so just an observation. But the villains were kind of not similar in the way that they were doing the same thing, but they tried to do the same thing twice. They tried to make you feel really bad for the main villain to the point to where you wanted him to be right to a point. And in Killmonger's case, it makes more sense because he's directly cut off from his royal family and
Sure.
everything. But with Namor in this case, he's been running his empire down there perfectly. They've got the most peaceful nation on earth and have
And
kept
Gills.
away, yeah, and kept away from the rest of the world and all of their issues for all of these years. So it's like I can understand, you know, you wanting to get back at the colonizers for what they did to you when you were a child and causing all of this for your people in the first place.
Hmm.
However, I don't know. It was kind of hard for me to feel bad for you when you're kind of just coming out of nowhere and be like, all right, time to take it back.
Yeah, in that aspect, it is kind of weird because it's like you have this giant kingdom that you're a king of, like you're a ruler of. It's like, man, this is great, except it's not.
Right. Like why are you upset? But I definitely understood. I mean, I will say it's been a while, so I'm sure there's a
Sure.
couple of things that I'm forgetting, but from what I can remember, overall, it was a good movie.
Yeah.
But I definitely think they could have done something a little bit different with Namor, just in the sense of what makes him the villain.
Yeah, I didn't really realize how similar the two villains were until you mentioned it, because they really are Killmonger and Namor, which is weird
Yeah.
for I think Namor, especially if people who are familiar with the comics. I feel like it's weird characterization of Namor.
I mean, in the comics, they both were originally villains in their first
Yeah,
appearances, and then they were killed. From what I can remember, Killmonger didn't never really get like a redemption thing in the comics, but it was more like he got his own stories more often. But then Namor became a part of the
a lot of
Avengers
things.
and a part of the Illuminati, which
Yeah,
is, I want them to build up to that so bad. I want all of that to happen, but that's a whole other conversation.
yeah, and that's definitely a conversation we're gonna have, especially once we talk about after the conversation, but about all both movies.
Yeah.
Um, but Brennan, you weren't as quick as RJ to say no, but you said no as well. Why?
Yeah. I don't like when I watched it like for the first time, my reaction was kind of just like that was a fine movie. There wasn't really any part of it that I didn't like, but it just did not grab me in anywhere near the same way like as the first Black Panther movie had. I think a lot of that had to do with Chadwick Boseman was such a fantastic part of like the first movie. He kind of had like the heart of it, and like they really did. I felt like respected his legacy well, but there was still that hole almost throughout most of like the movie that was really evident. So like it it was fine. It was all right. It just didn't necessarily grab me. There's not a whole lot that I have to talk about with this movie here. I will say one thing that when I think of this movie, I still love and like always comes to mind immediately is I do think this movie has one of my favorite scenes in all of the MCU, and it's when Shuri took like the remade like heart-shaped herb and is trying to connect with, I don't remember if she was trying to connect with her, it was her brother, like Chadwick Boseman, I think she was trying to connect with it. She goes, and we're kind of like, what's going to happen? And then you see the other side of the chair, you see who she's connecting with, and it's Killmonger. And I thought in across all elements of like the story, the production, like everything, I thought that was the coolest choice that they could have made, and that paid off so well. Like that was such a cool scene.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, the whole conversation that they have, what it means for everything here, like like its role in both the first Black Panther movie and this Black Panther movie, what it means for like everything, that was just so creative and so impactful. I thought that was fantastic. And there's so many elements around there where I absolutely love what they did with that. The story as a whole, I just didn't really connect with though, especially because like in the context of like the in-universe story of like what happened to the Black Panther, what's going on. I kind of felt like it was just so many sad notes for Wakanda, and then the whole like unnecessary conflict between like the Wakandans and the like Atlanteans. It's almost like give them a break here, guys.
Yeah, I can understand that. I'm so glad you said that though, Brennan, about the Shuri and Killmonger scene, because I had a conversation with somebody right after seeing it, and they were like,
Yeah.
I didn't like that scene. I didn't like that they had
Oh.
Killmonger instead of Shuri. And I looked at them and I was like, well, then that means you didn't understand what the point of that scene was.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
It was like if the whole point of her seeing Killmonger, at least from my perspective, what I saw, she was so angry with everything that was going on. I mean, losing everybody in her life, her mom, her brother, her father, the whole kingdom almost, and all these people around her she's trying to keep together that she's got left. And then she just wants to get revenge, basically. The same thing that Killmonger was doing when he first got the herb. And it's like, that's what he died for. So that's the last person to, other besides her brother, the last person she can relate to the most when it comes to that anger, and I thought that was really interesting that they had that in there.
Yeah.
Something about this movie that well, I like the movie. Look, it was a really good movie to like. It was a really visually pleasing movie. I thought they did a really good job with all that, and all the costumes are great. And and the storyline was pretty good. And like you said, Brennan, it just didn't grab you like the first one. But something I felt was really unsatisfying was the way it ended. Um, where they just kind of called a truce. Just felt a
Yeah.
little cheap to kind of keep some
Yeah,
characters around. And like I
Yeah.
understand doing that because you're trying to build a bigger picture with the MCU, especially with Namor, because he's such an important character in the comics. But it just felt so cheap.
Yeah.
At least they didn't kill off the bad guy like Marvel tends to do. But I
that's
don't know, it
what I
just
was
felt like
afraid of.
me too. And near the end of that movie, I was like, oh god, they're gonna kill off Namor. But then they just like called a truce and just kind of went their separate ways. It just felt it was just very unsatisfying ending.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And one of the things that it felt like to me, where I didn't necessarily like know how I felt about it initially here, but like as I look back, it really did feel like part one of like a
Yeah,
two-part movie thing, because you're like watching, you're like, how's it going to end? How's it going to get resolved? And they kind of called the truce, and it's like, okay, well, there is no true resolution here. It's kind of like, oh, we'll get back to this at some point,
yeah,
and it it just kind of leaves this like feeling of like, okay, well then, what was the point of everything that I watched here? And it still has some fantastic story beats, some fantastic like complete arcs, but like as a whole, it's just like what story were they really trying to tell through this conflict here if it's kind of ending on just like a pause?
yeah,
That's yeah, I can see that.
yeah. Definitely feels like they they had and maybe, and I don't know, I don't know if Ryan Coogler's ever like kind of came out and said what the original movie was, but it kind of almost feels like they went with the original movie plan, but had to kind of change some things to kind of make it work.
He actually has come out. I believe this was 100% confirmed. I'm not entirely sure. So we might need to fact check this here, but I'm pretty sure that he had revealed what the original plan for the movie was, and it sounded so cool. And like I wish it was a movie that we could have gotten here just because of what it sounded like. But Black Panther was supposed to have a son, and the movie was going to be him raising his son in Wakanda.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah, and it was going to be they were going to go off on a retreat, just him and his son, and then there would be like some conflict. I don't remember if Namor was the villain or not, but it would be him and his son kind of by themselves here would have to like respond to what was going on. And just like the whole description, like the details they gave, that would have been fantastic.
Yeah, and on that same beat, it was interesting that they kind of did keep that, that he had a son. Which they revealed later in the movie. Which I thought was a really interesting story note. So
I like that.
It's interesting to see where they go with that. They've introduced a lot of family members lately in the MCU and have done nothing with them. So
yeah, and that's
who knows
also
when they'll see them next. But
yeah, that's kind of what bugs me about kind of like the pause of like how it ended here, because I honestly don't think that it would bother me near as much, if at all, if like they announced like, oh, there's a third Black Panther movie that's like on the horizon here, or like here's what it's building up to. But kind of end on a pause, and it's like we know the next like 20 movies and shows, right? And there's like no hint of these characters returning in any of them here. So it's just it kind of speaks to the larger MCU problem of like where are we going? What direction are we headed in here?
Yeah, which we'll get to. But I don't have too much more to say on that. I mean, I know it's been such a long time since you guys have seen that movie, and I apologize for not for waiting so long to see it.
No, it's okay.
But do you guys have any like last thoughts on there before we move on to Ant-Man?
I thought it was interesting the son's name. He was Toussaint was a Haitian revolutionary, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Oh, sweet.
And going off of what you said with like the introducing a lot of family, I think they are trying their hardest to build. I think maybe to build up to the Young Avengers, but
Oh yeah, for sure.
See, I would love that, but like there have been so many rumors over all of the years, like, oh, they're building up to Young Avengers, and they still like they have a great group of kids if they ever want to do anything with that here, but it doesn't seem like they want to. And I don't know why they've been putting in all of these like children characters if they're not really doing anything with them. Yeah, children.
I mean, yeah. I mean they have Isaiah Bradley, they have Kate Bishop, they have God, what is Haley Steinfeld's character's name?
Kate Bishop?
Oh, sorry. Who is Cassie Lang? Sorry.
Kate
Bishop,
yeah.
Cassie Lang, Isaiah Bradley,
yeah. Yeah.
But
and you're absolutely right with like
Wanda's kids.
Yeah, you're absolutely right with saying like children in quotation marks, because for like half of that list, the list you just named off, those are not kids anymore.
No, they're our age
at all.
Yeah. Most of them are.
Yep.
I think Haley Steinfeld's a couple years older than us, but essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
Like a couple years younger than some early 20s, late teens.
Yeah. So, yeah, they're building up to something eventually. And then with the writer's strike, it's gonna be even longer. Who knows when anything's gonna happen.
Everything, honestly, after the writer's strike, depending on how everything goes, we could get a whole different slate of things, and everything could just be thrown out the window.
We don't know. We only have the things that are coming out. That's all we have at the moment. Like shit. So, so I think that's it on Black Panther 2.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Ant-Man 3.
Yes.
Ant-Man 3. What a movie. So I actually
speaking of the MCU being directionless here almost.
Yeah, okay, so RJ actually has watched this more recently than I have.
Oh, okay.
So Brennan,
I just watched
you're really
it
gonna
today.
have to stretch into the memory bank here, unless you've watched it again for whatever reason.
Nah, I remember enough of my thoughts, I'm pretty sure.
So Ant-Man 3 opens interestingly. Scott Lang, I mean, it kind of opens kind of where we had seen quote unquote Scott Lang in Miss Marvel. He wrote a book. He has a podcast.
Yes,
he's like this big. He won't shut up essentially about what the Avengers did, which is par for the course for Scott Lang. I mean, that makes the most sense.
100%.
He's just happy to be there, and he's truly so glad to be actually appreciated for his efforts this time.
His family does not appreciate him at all. They are sick of him.
They do. They
appreciate him a bit.
Yeah, it's like Dad, come on, relax, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, we love you, but like, shut up.
Well, I think we've all had that moment with the parents. Like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, you know that classic moment where your parent saves the world from an alien stuff, and then they write a book and have a podcast. That classic family trope.
We've all dealt with that once or twice.
I mean, you guys have read my dad's book, right? I've definitely read both of your dad's book. So, I mean, if you guys haven't read my dad's book, then we're going to have some problems. We're going to talk through after the podcast.
I'm getting through it. Don't worry.
The audiobook's even better because he reads it. He just cracks jokes randomly throughout it. Anyway. So then they end up in the quantum realm because Cassie's been messing around there, even though she shouldn't have been.
Well, and I think you skipped over like
we're not going frame by frame.
No, but like the whole like flashback thing, because like that's like super early on in the movie. I don't think so.
What flashback?
I mean, I can't remember, but like when you see
the flashback to when what's her name met, or when I hope Janet.
Yeah,
I think that's after.
Yeah, there was there was a few cuts throughout the first like 30 minutes.
Yeah,
and the first one is like the first scene when they first meet.
Yeah,
but then they finally get her to talk about it later, which
You're right.
I just gotta say, my biggest issue with this whole movie is Janet Van Dyne.
Oh, yeah?
Why in the world would you go to this quantum realm, somehow make it back after all these years, and then not say anything about any of that? Because that's the big, heavy shit.
Well, she disappeared for 5 years, remember?
Huh?
She disappeared for 5 years, remember? They got arrested.
You got some other time. You got some other time and all that.
Yeah, I guess so.
Look, if I don't know about y'all, but if I went down there and I was a freedom fighter fighting against this guy that I thought I was helping, that it was a good guy, but is actually an insane, psychopathic, conquering monster, I would have told somebody about that when I came back and been like, look, guys, considering what you just went through, and now all of a sudden I'm back, you think Thanos is bad. This motherfucker is even worse. So let's maybe do something to keep him where he's at. But no, it's fine. It's fine.
Or even in the very least, because like I believe that she was like, "Oh, I said don't go and mess around with the quantum realm and like all that." I believe that was like a throwaway line. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but like, it's like old woman mad at daughter.
Yeah, but like if I knew what was going on down there, and I came out and I knew that my like whole family was like scientists who would experiment with that, I would say explicitly why. I'd be like, hey guys, I know you're like super curious science people, so like here's I'm telling you everything here just so you don't accidentally do all of this.
Right. And how do you not know that Cassie is messing around with the whole portal basically, or making a map, or whatever she said about it, and
it was like
Wait,
a satellite thing that
can we back up for a second though?
Yeah.
What were they doing at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp 2? Going to the quantum realm.
They
she
were
was helping.
That. I feel like they forgot that. I feel like they just forgot about that completely.
Like, well, no, because they all got snapped. They all got snapped.
But Scott was stuck down there. Remember?
Yeah.
Right.
So why was she helping them in the first place? And then Scott
because
got.
They were
and then
how
did Scott not see any of this when he was there for 5 years?
That's another question that I have because they
forgot about it. They just that's not important.
Okay, so the whole time dilation thing. He was down there. He said it felt like 5 minutes for him.
Yeah,
but it was the whole 5-year span that everybody was snapped.
Yep.
So the time
what about Janet?
Was down there,
yeah, it just so happened. It just so happened that Janet's 30 years or whatever were also our 30 years.
So I think there was another line about that I noticed. It was how she said like where they were. Because I think I do remember Scott saying I didn't see any of this when I came down here.
Okay.
I think it was because she was on the level that she was at where they ended up at in this movie is like 30 times deeper than where Scott was those 5 minutes that he was in there, or 5 years in our time.
Yeah, because like I guess there were also those like the ants or whatever that like Hank had with him that got knocked off somewhere else, and then they like had like 1 billion years of evolution, or something like that.
That was weird too.
They were like even deeper or something.
There's so much inconsistency in this movie.
I think so. I was thinking about that.
At least the CGI was great.
Oh yeah, it was phenomenal. I watched it on my phone and it still all looked really good. Oh man, but there was the inconsistency. I think was kind of on. Some parts of it felt like it was on purpose, just to like get the feel of like the quantum realm, how confusing it can be when you get down there. But also I think it was just slightly some bad writing, because why is Darren back? Why is he MODOK?
Yeah, that was so weird. I didn't get that either.
I was so excited to finally see MODOK live action, and then it's the Yellow Jacket that got squished. Like, I get it. You wanted to bring this one guy back and make his character relevant, fine. But
to be fair, you can't do MODOK regularly. This is the only way you could have done MODOK.
You know what?
Such an interest. He's such a weird looking and just weird character. In the comics, he makes sense, but in real life, or quote unquote real life, it makes no sense. So I feel like this is the only way that could have happened, where his head is thrown into the. Also, when did his head get chopped off? Did his head get chopped off in the first movie?
No, that was his whole body.
It was his whole body was like shrunk in misproportion, I think. Why? Is what he was trying to say.
Just
because they explain it, kind of.
I know that's how MODOK looks. I get that, but I don't know. It's just I feel like this is the only way to do MODOK, and they somehow still fucked it up.
Like, and like I don't know, because like I did feel like what they did with him was kind of like it made sense in the story. There were some cool callbacks that they did with it, so there was a lot of it where I was like, hey, that's kind of cool, kind of funny here. It makes sense, but I feel especially because the rest of the story was like super lacking in a lot of areas. It's like MODOK did not help with that at all.
Yeah, no,
not at all.
Like if like you had a great story, you could have done that well, but because they didn't have the great story, it just felt super weird.
Yeah.
MODOK
is such a cool character too, and he's like he can be so menacing.
Yeah,
you know what? Though, there were some parts in there where it was like, wow, he actually is a little bit scary.
Yeah, and then they did what they always do for villains. They killed him.
Yeah,
every single freaking time Marvel does that. I don't know what they love killing villains.
I don't think that version of Kang is dead.
Sorry. Well, okay, not Kang, but I meant like in general. Like I was more referring to MODOK. We haven't even got to Kang yet.
Yeah, no, like, it's totally great that you said that though, because I was about to say, can we just jump to Kang and the fact that they killed off Kang the Conqueror, and then if there was any ambiguity left at all, they had a whole post-credit scene where they were like, "Yeah, that Kang is dead," and it's like there was no reason to do that. There was you could have just left it like up in the air, like a mystery here, or just not kill them off at all. Just trap them back in the quantum realm, and you're fine. Why do you have to kill off kind of like arguably here the most well-known Kang variant before the Kang dynasty here? It just doesn't make sense.
I think they did that on purpose. I think this is a big misdirection. And that whole end credit scene, I think they did that on purpose to make you be like, what the fuck, what's going on? Because if you don't explicitly, I feel like if you don't, so far, Marvel has proven, if you don't explicitly see the dead body of that character,
which we didn't,
then they're not dead.
Yeah.
They're going to come back in some way, somehow. They're going to explain it away. And I think this time, I think they're doing that again. I don't think that variant of Kang, I think that's going to be the one that comes back later on, and that's why he's going to be so hell-bent on taking over that version of Earth.
So question here also, and this is kind of like off the topic of like Ant-Man 3 specifically, but just talking about Kang and the Kang Dynasty movie here. Do we still think that's happening with how Disney has been like trying to distance themselves from Jonathan Majors?
What?
Well, did you not see the stuff that was going on about him?
I've been so divorced from everything because of work. Like I put in like a 12-hour workday work yesterday. That's been like that for the past couple weeks.
But because I mean, this goes back to like I think like the month after Ant-Man 3 came out, like Jonathan Majors was, I think, either arrested or just
I do remember this,
accused of some pretty bad stuff, and like his defense, and it's like, okay, hear him out, whatever, and his defense was just not there at all. And then like so much other bad stuff came out about him, and it's like, it looks like he is doing some bad stuff here.
Yeah, I did see the initial thing he got arrested for was the stuff with that ex-girlfriend, where it was like she was accusing him of putting his hands on her or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And in that specific case, it did come out that she was making up a lot of it. But later on, there were other stuff that was coming out, like he said, where he was doing other, not so good things. And there was a lot more people just in the industry, period, that were coming out and saying, yeah, he's kind of a person you want to keep away from because of his aggression issues or whatever. So
he's not a small dude. Like if he's got that kind of problem, I mean, he can do some damage.
Yeah, he works out. I mean, he did the Apollo Creed movie.
Yeah, which I heard is fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that I think that came out right around the same time, if not right before.
Yeah. Because I remember a lot of people were saying that this was the year of Jonathan Majors because he was in a bunch of movies.
Yeah, and he was. Despite whatever they say, whatever happens to come out or whatever they find out about him, I think his performances so far have been good.
Oh yeah.
What they're gonna do with him, with his character in the future, I don't know. With this, the way the writer's strike is going, we don't know how any of this.
We just straight up don't know anything about the future, but it was an interesting storyline, and
with all this shit, like all this stuff with Jonathan Majors and like how it's looking here, it's like I would not blame Disney at all for wanting to distance themselves from him, but like they just had a scene in Ant-Man 3 where they showed essentially every single variant of Kang, where these variants could theoretically look like anything or anyone, and all of them looked exactly like Jonathan Majors here.
Yeah.
So it's like if they do decide, hey, you know, we're not going with Jonathan Majors anymore, then what happens to the King dynasty?
Well, they've done it once
So
with Rhodey, with
Yep, yep.
replacing Cuba Gooding Jr. after he was asking for too much money.
So-
I don't think you could put it past them that they'll do it again to just replace him and not say anything.
So it looks like that. So a couple news things have come out the last couple of days saying that he will remain, but now the stuff's coming out about him when he was in college. So, yeah.
So
apparently he went to Yale.
Well, there you go.
But yeah, it's just
22 sources
kind of like
from Yale.
It's just kind of like the weird thing where Marvel's been kind of like super directionless here recently, and they still kind of were with this movie, but they were finally like building up to the huge event, and then it's like this happens, and it's like, well, what's gonna happen with the huge event thing now? And it just feels so weird because like I assume King the Conqueror, they're building up to him being the BBEG, and it is still possible. This movie almost heavily implies, oh, it's no longer Kang the Conqueror. It's like the Council of Kangs or whatever. And it's like, well, that's not as fun.
Yeah. Well, and you know, we had discussed this, Brennan, when we hung out in Ashe County in Quebec.
Yep.
We live in Canada.
Classic Ashe County, Quebec.
We had talked about, you know, how this movie would have been better if it had just been just a flashback.
Yeah.
Where, you know, this movie was them finding Kang and helping him rebuild and then finding out he's a bad guy. And then he left, went to wherever he went to. And then from there, this would be like the Kang Dynasty movie. It almost felt like they tried to put too much into an Ant-Man 3 movie.
They tried to put way too much into it. And like it just like, I mean, they still got some jokes in. It was still fine, but like I feel like they could have done so much more. Like still, I'm sticking to it. I think one of my favorite MCU movies of all time. Not my favorite. My favorite now and forever will be Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. But one of my favorite movies will always be Ant-Man and the Wasp, just because I loved so many elements of that movie. I thought the balance of a lot of it was perfect. And it's like they'd hit their strides. I think Ant-Man 1, Ant-Man 2, and this movie, it just felt like they were trying to do, just like you said here, way too much, and it kind of takes you away from the character.
Yeah. Well, and like we also discussed this, there's like no Wasp in this movie.
Yeah.
It's called Ant-Man and the Wasp. Well, like she's not in it, like hardly ever.
She kind of saves the day in the end.
Yeah, which is wild because she's like not in it. Like she's there, but she didn't do anything.
Like that, I don't know.
Weird.
I want to say something real quick about the Wasp. Just the controversial, sticking it in there real quick. No real opinions. I don't really like Hope. I don't really like. I don't think you're supposed to.
I don't think you're supposed to like her.
Is she? Are they? Do you think they might be setting her up to be like a villain or something? Maybe.
Oh,
maybe that'd be interesting.
I don't think that. Like, see, like, I did not like her in Ant-Man 1 all that much, but then I ended up liking her in Ant-Man and the Wasp a lot. I thought she was a great character there, and then here she kind of just went back to.
She's a background character. It was really weird.
Yeah.
Also, who keeps letting her get bad haircuts?
She changed her hair like 3 times in
the movie. Yeah, something like that. But they're all bad. She's had good hair. She's had like a good haircut in like Avengers and in Ant-Man and the Wasp 2, which was the best movie. Maybe they like to include her more when her hair is better. Which this now seems misogynistic, so I'm gonna stop talking about her.
Let's say like
actually, you know what? Let's talk
I'm not going to speak to that at all.
Let's talk about Hank's hair.
Hank's hair?
Actually, he's got glorious hair.
Let's say his hair always looks great to me.
Yeah, it's got like almost.
What do I know?
Yeah.
Hank is something else.
Brennan, you've talked about this a couple times on the show, and then when we've hung out, we need a Hank Pym show.
Yeah, no, that's what I would love. I've said this a million times when like I heard that like that that Disney Plus is going to have all of these MCU shows. I was like, okay, perfect. You can fill in some gaps. You can have this like like really flesh out the MCU as a whole. And one of the things you see talked about, I think in the first Ant-Man movie, I can't remember if it's in the second one or not, but all this stuff that Hank and Janet did during the Cold War. And I think a show based on that, that would be so cool.
Ooh,
That's
I
so much
forgot about that.
unexplored
Yeah.
territory. Like that would be so cool. And they just don't do anything with that.
I think it's because they want to keep away from political stuff so they don't get into history stuff as much. Because
keep away from political. Did you watch Winter Soldier? Did you watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier? I don't think that's it at all. Now that's maybe like a different side of politics, you know, with the things that are going on in Europe right now. Maybe they don't want to touch that, but
like nobody
he's
wants
so
to talk about
freaking good.
Cold War when it's still going on, you know?
Yeah, but he's so freaking good though. It'd be so good.
It would be such a good show. Like there's all these areas where if Marvel like actually explored it, like they would have so many hits on their hand, but instead they just keep trying to like add more and more like homework
Yeah.
essentially onto the big pile where it's like have a fun show. Have a
Right.
fun Hank Pym just doing his adventures in his youth. It doesn't have any bearing on the MCU as a whole. It's like an optional fun thing you can watch. But then maybe at the end they they tease something that like 40 years later in universe finally comes into play in one of the movies, and you don't have to have seen the show to understand it, but if you do, you can be like, connecting the dots, this is cool.
Well,
This is awesome.
And you can throw in interesting cameos like the Winter Soldier, and you can throw in interesting cameos like Captain America or
Boom.
the Red, or what's his name,
the Red Skull.
No,
the Red Skull.
Red Skull, but no,
the Red Guardian.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because he has no background, but he was there. I forgot about him.
Yeah.
Remember that movie,
That'd be
Black
neat.
Widow? That came out.
Yeah, and then
that was a good movie. That was a good one.
That was fun.
And then he's supposed to be in like Thunderbolts here as well, but like I don't actually remember when that's coming out because they keep shuffling around the dates so much and the plans
and it's
for
gonna get
it.
shuffled again.
Yeah.
Fuck that movie, honestly. I don't care.
Like,
wasn't there something that got delayed indefinitely until like the writer's strike was over?
Fantastic
Four, so much stuff, probably.
Yeah.
That movie ever happening?
Fantastic Four, absolutely not. It's
look, third time's the charm. Third time's the charm.
Do you remember like
time. I don't know what you're talking about.
Do you remember the episode of Community where like Annie's in like Professor Ian Duncan's class and they're testing out like the Duncan principle about waiting, and then like Abed keeps waiting? That's what's happening with Fantastic Four.
Yeah, and we're about to be Professor Duncan. And we're gonna flip out because it's not out yet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nah, it's actually Marvel who's Professor Ian Duncan. They're like, why are these people still expecting Fantastic Four?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
why we were still expecting to see Wolverine in the yellow costume, and we finally got it.
Yes, that's
this is very true.
Well, that is some news that came out while we were gone. Is that we got a picture.
It's
of Daredevil and Wolverine.
I mean, we got a picture. We got some videos. We got like there's a whole fight scene that like they were doing on set.
So is that still going? Are they still filming that, or is that just coming out?
No, there's actually a rumor going around too that they started filming it right before they thought an actor strike might pop up to like generate public backlash against the actors strike, because everyone's like, oh, we want Deadpool to film. I don't know why they thought that would work, if that's what their strategy was. I haven't necessarily seen a lot of that.
That's weird. But
online here.
And I do know that
it is. Oh, sorry, yeah.
I do know that in the last couple movies, Ryan Reynolds has used some of his wealth to kind of fund the movies himself.
Yeah.
So I think he might be more so doing the same thing in this case, because I saw that picture that I saw came out. I think it was
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and the writer's strike has been going on for almost a month now.
The writer's strike was still going on when me and Brennan recorded our last podcast.
Yeah, like
it's been a while.
So the writer's strike has been going on for a while, but the actor's strike only started like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, somewhere.
Because there's a lot more actors joining the strike. Yeah.
There is some concern about the quality of Deadpool 3, and I don't know if you guys have seen this here, but like because Ryan Reynolds is credited as a writer for
Deadpool 3. And the guys, the girls who do Bob's Burgers, I believe.
Yeah. And like there was a rumor coming around that because he's listed as a writer, any improvisation he does on set while recording is considered a rewrite of the script. So while the writer's strike was going on, he can't improvise anything because he's a writer. And if that's true, like so much of the charm in Ryan Reynolds' acting comes from his the improvs he does on set.
That's true.
And if during all the scenes he's filmed, if he truly was not allowed to improv during all of them, that's gonna kind of suck.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to tell what's new, what's like good news that comes out of like what's credible news that coming out of all this.
Yeah.
So you really have to take everything with a grain of salt. Yeah. So,
but anyway, back to Ant-Man 3 here. It just felt so, especially just with like the CGI being what it was like. There were some good bits when like I first came out of the theater. I was like, yeah, that was a good movie, and like I thought about it for a couple of days, and was like, I don't really think that was a good movie here. One of the things I will say is even though they tried to portray Kang as terrifying, I wasn't really like scared of Kang during the movie at all. The most scared of him I was like in the post credit scene where it essentially just has a scene from Loki season 2.
Oh yeah.
And it's Loki looking at a Kang variant, and you just see like his face will be pale and like he's like petrified. Basically here I'm like, oh yeah, I'm scared of Kang now because of like the one who remains in Loki, that whole dynamic there, all the build up to that. Like the show Loki, in my opinion, has done a great job of like characterizing all the power Kang has. Mm-hmm. And this movie, the movie about Kang the Conqueror, you know, the most fearsome of all the Kang variants, I just didn't feel like he was just some like super powered bad guy, but like he was beat pretty easily by Ant-Man in the very end, all things considered here. It didn't take like a team of super powered people to stop him. It just took Ant-Man and the right circumstances and Kang being slow.
And that kind of goes back to what I was saying about the buildup. If we had this movie as like I said, the not the cutscene, the flashback, and then that would have maybe they taken Kang from this oh, I need help, and then we find out he's this terrible beast of a person that we saw in Loki, and watch him just go away. And then maybe I don't know what the conflict is there. Maybe there's like a secondary bad guy. Maybe Bill Murray's character is a bad guy instead. And maybe they're all trying to take him down at the same time. They're trying to help Kang, something like that.
That was also kind of a weird inclusion of Bill Murray as well, in my opinion. Like literally, they were kind of building him up to do more, but then his screen time is essentially like the same as his screen time in the advertisement.
Yeah, pretty much. So I don't know. Definitely, we got the build up in Loki.
Yeah, it's like,
and they built him up so much there was no satisfaction coming out. Coming out of it.
In the very least, just leave Kang alive at the very end. You're not going to do any of this other stuff we've been talking about. Just leave him 100% confirmed to be alive here, and you have like some dramatic tension between now and the next movie. But there almost is no dramatic tension now because, in my mind and all of our minds, he is dead. Oh, he might come back. He might be fine, but like he's dead.
Yeah.
calling him dead and then including that thing about that cutscene from Loki was weird.
Yeah,
maybe that's just me. It just didn't make sense.
Well,
like, it's like, oh, he's dead now, and then oh no, here we're building him back up again.
And this also is kind of the weird thing where like that, was not King the Conqueror. That was just another King variant that was fine. But like, it's weird because that was the one thing that actually Marvel had lined up pretty well. Like the only thing that they had lined up well was that movie and Loki season 2. Because Loki season 2 was originally supposed to release like 2 months after that movie. So that movie's kind of like a cool kind of build in to what's gonna happen. But then that show isn't coming out till I think like November, September.
Yeah, I would imagine that's all finished now. I think it's probably in editing.
Yeah, well, like the show has been done for a bit, but they wanted to push off everything to give it like extra time to be polished here. But it's like now they've lost so much of that momentum I think that they would have had.
They better go in with like 10 million great sandpaper because they're gonna need that thing to be like super fucking polished.
Yeah, and I hope it's better than season 1. I liked season 1 a lot, but I like shows that end on satisfying notes. And Loki season 1 ended on the biggest cliffhanger it could have because they knew it was getting a season 2. But it's like, what's the point of calling it like season 1, season 2 if there's no like satisfying story in each season?
I think, and we'll be able to reflect on this once we've seen Loki season 2. I wonder if it'll have been better if they released season 2 before they released Ant-Man 3.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So, we'll come back to that, but I mean,
and there's also
yeah.
Do we remember when Daredevil, not Daredevil, when Deadpool 3 is supposed to release here?
I don't know. Well, we know nothing now. We know absolutely nothing now.
Oh yeah. So according to the last update here, Deadpool 3 is supposed to release in May of next year. It might get pushed.
Well, I think the way,
but I am interested to see how it ties in to Loki here as well, because I don't know what you've seen, but there's supposed to be a lot of like tie-ins with that. So
yeah.
A lot of cameos.
It's so confusing now. Everything is confusing. We're screwed in terms of trying to keep up. But
I was gonna say at this point, you might as well just assume everything's getting pushed back with the writer's strike.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like COVID. Obviously not as bad. People aren't dying. Well, maybe some people are, but not as a direct result. But we should just treat it as everything getting pushed back a year. Don't wait for anything unless you know for sure it's coming out.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's how it's going to be, and it's just the storytelling that I think Marvel's attempting at and ultimately failing at. It's just how it's just how it's going to have to be for a little bit, and maybe we'll look back on phase 4 and 5, and and 6, and we'll be like, okay, maybe that was okay, and in the end, hindsight, it didn't work at the time, but now that we've seen everything, it works. Now that we have like a watching order,
I mean, I
don't think that's going to happen. That's not going to happen for some time, though.
Yeah, it just sucks because it didn't have to happen, like especially with the quality and like in storytelling that like they've had. That wasn't like an inevitable thing. That was Marvel just screwed up completely. I'm still grateful we got some of the stuff we did, like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, superb, perfect movie in my opinion. Here puts the rest of the MCU to shame completely. So, like that's cool. I wish we had that same level of storytelling for a lot of the other movies here, but like I will take the good with the bad for now.
Well, it's like you've said a couple times, or I think we both said it. James Gunn with that movie tried to make a good movie, then a good Marvel movie. I don't at this point. I think they're just going for a Marvel movie. I don't even think they're going for good Marvel movie, just Marvel movie.
I don't know if you've seen
content.
Yeah, content. I don't know if you've seen all this stuff, but like I do think that DC will absolutely see a resurgence and probably take Marvel's place because of their love for comic books and the fans of comic books. because it's come out so much recently with all the recent projects. Kevin Feige has been like, don't read the comic books, don't pay attention to the comic books. Here's like the name of something, make your own thing with this name. And
oh yeah,
it's like when the comics have such cool stories, why are you not wanting to know what made them great and kind of replicating that in your own way? Why are you ignoring that completely?
Yeah.
And going in your own like it just feels so disingenuous. It feels like they don't have any love for Marvel. Like Kevin Feige has apparently clashed with so many directors who are like, "Oh yeah, I absolutely love the comics," or like, "Here's my inspiration." He's like, "Don't you dare!" And it's like that's just like, why are you making Marvel movies if you don't love
Marvel? Yeah.
Marvel as a whole? If you're just doing it for money, for the profits, that's gonna dry up real quick here. Because like James Gunn loves the comics, he loves the characters. For DC, he put out like the comics reading list that like he's basing a lot of the movies on, and sales for those comics have exploded here. And that's like, DC's finally starting to like, reach across the aisle with what it's doing. The movies and shows helping the comics, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, it made me think, it's like, why is Marvel not promoting its comics with the movies and shows it's making here?
I think it's just the ebb and flow of things at this point. I mean, during the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, it was a high for DC. I mean, they had the original Batman show, they had all the Superman movies, they had the 80s Batman movies. And then, in the 2000s, Marvel kind of took over with Spider-Man, Hulk, and then Fantastic Four. And then, right before the MCU started, the Batman movies were doing really well. And then they went back, and there's Marvel's turn for a while. DC tried to get back in there, and as we know, it's just not great. Obviously, they had some good movies in there and whatnot. But now, Marvel's on a downhill. And I think DC's kind of getting back, and they're going to be the big one for a while.
I don't know though.
It's just, I think it's just right now, it's just the ebb and flow of things. I mean,
yeah, I personally think that both Marvel and DC should just take a break from live action and just start focusing more on the animated stuff. I've probably said it.
Well,
I've probably said it before, but
I'm in
DC
line with that.
was killing it with the animated stuff for like a while, and even now, they just released it's like a sequel to the Gotham by Gaslight thing that was a few years ago. There's another one where it's like the same time period, I think, but it's Doomsday, and but in like the what is it? I think like the 1800s or something.
Oh, kind of like the not Marvel 19 or 1650 something.
I don't know.
Okay,
but
steampunk-esque kind of, right?
Oh yeah, well, kind of, yeah, a little bit. It's more so just straight up like 1800s, the way it was back then, with like horse-drawn characters and everything. And then Batman himself is like kind of steampunk because he's
Batman.
Got a little bit more advanced stuff. That's but cool. I just think if they were to just focus on that stuff more and just take a break from the live action, they would get so much more, content. They want to put out content. It seems to me that it's a lot easier to do the animation stuff than it is to do the live action stuff. At least it's a lot easier to do it good, I would say.
Yeah, Brennan's been pushing that for a while, especially when we heard about the Spider-Man, was it senior year or college years or freshman year?
Freshman year. Yep.
I mean, you were all over that.
Yeah. I like Spider-Man freshman year, especially all of the original concept art for that looked fantastic. It had that nice 2D animation style, which I would have loved, especially because like with What If, I really did not vibe with that animation style as a whole. That kind of seems to be what Marvel's sticking to. When I saw Spider-Man freshman year, I was like, oh, absolutely 100% sign me up here. And that got canceled. They're bringing it back, but they're giving it that like
who knows now?
3D animation style, they confirmed they're like moving to like that 3D what if style, and I'm like, come on, just I don't understand the decisions they're making and the choices they're making, because like it is so much easier to do superhero stuff in animation than it is in live action. It'll always be easier here.
Marvel's done it before. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit in depth, Brennan, about the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes show. That was incredible. It was really good storytelling, really good animation, and like they didn't have to get the big actors, and they had people who sounded enough like them. And I mean, DC's been doing this for fucking decades. I mean, they've always had great animated content.
Marvel did have a few animated movies back in the day. There was one, the Avengers one, which is like the big one that started the craze for a little bit.
Yeah. And that's what spawned the movie. Or sorry, the show. It was the Avengers, the big Avengers, and then they had a 2-season television show on I think Disney XD or something. It was really good. If you haven't watched it, I definitely recommend it. Earth's Mightiest Heroes, not Assemble. Assemble's kind of like a continuation, but it's not nearly as good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then because like in the animated show stuff, well, I will always plug like the show that I just really love is Young Justice, that like started off. It was like a DC show on Cartoon Network. It had like 2 seasons there, got canceled, got brought back on like DC Unlimited, got canceled, got brought back on like HBO Max.
They were trying to kill it, and it just wouldn't stay dead because it's too good. And
the story they were able to tell over those 4 seasons there, absolutely love that, especially because it starts off as like as a kid show, kind of being on Cartoon Network, and it kind of naturally even gets darker on Cartoon Network. But then once it gets off and kind of has more freedom, it gets really dark in a lot of areas.
And
it's done so well.
And maybe it's just like they're hesitant with the American audience, and Americans, they think, cartoons for adults is Family Guy, which love Family Guy, love South Park. You could do a lot more really good, really deep storytelling with animation. I mean, anime's been doing it for decades.
Yeah.
And Marvel and less so DC. Marvel is really the only one at the moment who doesn't really have a handle on it. Really take a couple notes from anime and being able to tell really deep stories, even getting violent too, if you really wanted to. Deep stories. I mean, I just finished catching up on My Hero Academia, which it doesn't get as dark as other shows, obviously. But it can get really heavy at times, and like the action sequences and the storytelling is fantastic. And I would really love to see something like that from Marvel, especially right now in the state that they're in the lull that they're in storytelling wise. It would really help, I think, and they would bring back characters that we've been introduced to but won't see for a while.
That's true.
Speaking here of being able to tell fantastic stories through animation, do we want to move to Spiderverse, or do we have any last thoughts about Ant-Man 3? I guess we were still technically talking about.
I think we're just talking about the state of Marvel, and that doesn't really even include Sony, because Sony's on a whole different thing right now.
Yeah,
we just got a trailer for what's it called?
Craven.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like Marvel's over here doing its weird thing, and then just Sony's over and screaming at it.
Yeah, it's kind of insane to me how Sony, in my opinion, has not been able to really do live action comic book movies well at all.
Yeah.
But like they are kicking butt doing these like the first Spider-Verse movie, the Spider-Verse movie, like insanely good movies, great ratings, doing fantastic there. And then with what Kraven the Hunter is kind of looking like, and what Morbius was, and like Venom was all right. I like those movies. I wouldn't necessarily go back and rewatch them. It's like they're just not the standout hits that they're hoping for. But then Spider-Verse is just incredible.
Yeah. So let's and I'm gonna do the same thing I did with Black Panther here. I'm gonna ask the same exact question. Was this movie as good as the first one, or was it better?
I think it was better.
Same.
I agree.
No? Well, okay.
It's better in a different way.
I'll let you answer first, Brennan. and then I'll say what I gotta say about it.
All right, Brennan, shoot.
Sweet. What was the question?
Oh, I said, was this movie as good or better?
Oh yeah, like better. In my opinion, where I absolutely love the first movie. The first movie was great, but now in this movie you kind of have the characters established. You have the characters' backstories established. Wally is leaving. And you can tell a story on the exact same tier with characters that you are now very, very familiar with. So just for that, like I thought the stories were both top tier. They were fantastic, but just because you know the characters so well now, that's what bumps this movie up a notch for me.
RJ?
Yeah. So I thought, so for me personally, as a Spider-Man fan from the day that I could talk.
Hold on, real quick. Let me add some context. RJ texted me and said, when we talking about this on the podcast, because I need to be on this. So RJ has some very strong opinions about this movie.
I texted you that as soon as I got out of the theater the second time, because I saw the movie twice.
Oh wow!
Oh nice!
I saw the movie twice, back-to-back days. I think it was.
I saw it the week after it opened, which is a lot because I very rarely go to the movie theater. So
yeah, but so I thought this movie. So my thoughts on the first movie, first of all, was when it came out, my brain couldn't comprehend that a movie could be that good. And not only that a movie could be that good animated.
Yeah.
And not only for that, but for you to be able to relate to it on, like, anybody could relate to a lot of the stuff, if not the entire story that's going on. But there's a lot of people that can relate to it almost exactly. And I think for me personally, growing up, it was like I was looking at, myself in another world.
Sure.
It was just so.
Wait, your Miles Morales? Where's your spider pen? Where's your spider powers?
Well, I just mean it's hard to really go into it without getting too serious, but it's just the way that they went about telling the story of a kid being told his whole life that he's supposed to do life a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And then once he starts doing it the way that they say, all of a sudden now it's not good enough. And he's not even one of them. And now he's just finally decided, you know what, fuck it, I'm doing it my own way. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to keep doing it. And then that was the whole first movie. And then the second movie is him establishing, like you said, all of these ideas and characters have already been established. Now it's just hitting it home and making it a full story out of it. This is the beginning of the true story of these characters. Mm-hmm. And just the way that the amount of story that goes into Miles as a character, for not just for Spider-Man, but for Marvel in general, the way that they portrayed that in this movie was phenomenal. The soundtrack, phenomenal. The relationships between all the characters, and even the ending that I know so many people were so upset about. I loved it.
The visuals ending were incredible as well.
Yeah.
And we'll get to the ending, obviously. I want to say that for the end, essentially. But we got a lot more character growth, and they built the character of Gwen Stacy a lot in this movie. Yeah. And it seemed like the first half of this movie was almost like it was kind of gearing it toward it being Gwen's movie. And then we kept that story, but it wasn't pushed too far to the side, and we got Miles' story as well. And I think they did a really good job of balancing the two stories.
Great
balance.
I
think other movies would have maybe pushed Gwen's to the side almost completely, and then maybe just done something little to kind of But we even got a satisfying, not end to her story, but a good. It was resolved.
Closure. Yeah.
We got closure to what happened at the beginning of the movie. Yeah. And I think they did a really good job of balancing those two stories. And
100%.
And Gwen's even uplifted Miles' story even more and made it even that much more important to the movie.
Yeah. The there was I can't even think of like anything negative to say about this movie because it was just everything that happened. They made it all made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And even with the amount of different variations of Spider-Man, it was like they made sure that the only way that you're going to see all of them is if you go back and, go frame by frame. But even still, with the amount of detail that they put into it, I thought it was like, wow.
The fact they built an entire Lego set.
Right. Yeah.
And like
they're
just
not
the
just
unique
in the background.
Yeah, like the unique art style for most of them was incredible and so well done.
Speaking of unique art styles, I'm sorry. I don't know if you guys saw it, but the way that Miles was animated versus the way that the rest of the Spider-Men were animated, and then also the specific way that Hobie, Spider-Punk, was animated.
Yeah.
All of that was I thought the inclusion of all of that was insane. Do you know anything about all of that?
Yeah, it was really I like how they did that distinguishing factor. And you saw it even with Gwen when the way that her background changed during different emotional scenes in the movie, which I thought was phenomenal, especially when she thought her dad was going to be really mad at her and the background really faded and then her and her father had this great heart to heart. The background came back more vibrant than ever. Such a beautiful movie in the way that they played with the imagery and the emotions and what was being said. It was phenomenal. And like you said, each spider person being animated differently,
not just
to reinforce that they are different than what they come from.
I do mean that, but I meant specifically like the framework of each of them, because it's like, so with Miles, he's animated in twos, so it means that every two frames they change his pose, but he
I
keeps the
didn't know
same
that.
pose. Yeah, so every two frames his pose is the same. And then for everybody else, it's the regular frame by frame. But for Spider-Punk, his is actually every three frames, and it's because he's like the anarchist and all that. He doesn't,
Interesting. That's really cool.
yeah, they wanted to hit home he's not conforming to the rest of everybody else. But I thought that inclusion just really hit home, like with the other part you said about just the visual aspect of the entire movie.
Well, and something that was interesting with Hobie is that I think, I'm obviously going to compare different. I'm not comparing specific movies, but in other movies, that's almost like an annoying character that you don't really want to be there.
Right.
And like maybe to some people he was, but like he also played a big part in Gwen trying to get Miles, not back, but like, get Miles back. And she made it possible for her to do that.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't like he was not selfish, but like I guess just going to the beat of his own drum, which is like the whole point of Spider-Punk. And like he also like cared enough to help.
But it was more about it being instead of it just being straight up going against everything just for the sake of it. I like that they made sure that with like all of his phrases and everything, what he was saying, he's doing it because he knows he clearly knows what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
And he just doesn't want anybody to subscribe to anything without knowing what actually is going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like the inclusion of Donald Glover in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
That was
live action too.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
It's also interesting foreshadowing as well.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's not foreshadowing. Maybe it's more like they doubled back and like maybe the events of Spider-Man 3, he ended up in some other universe or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. I just love I love Donald Glover because he is the reason we have Miles Morales in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is the whole reason behind all of it. I'm sure with your knowledge of the Community episode and all of that.
Yep.
I mean, going all the way back to that, just how could you not have this man be a part of this? You know,
Yep.
in every instance that has to do with Miles, you have to have Donald Glover in some aspect.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. Yeah, that was cool. And then they included the death of Uncle Ben, for Toby and Andrew's Spider-Man as well.
Yeah.
In that whole in the canon event sequence, which those memes have been spectacular.
The canon event, Miles.
Yeah.
Speaking of canon events, what do we feel about Miguel's theory of the canon events?
That's wild.
Yeah,
it's a wild theory.
Yeah. Are you talking about how Miles isn't supposed to be Spider-Man?
Well, no, just
the events have to happen, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
I hope not.
There's a lot. I've been looking into a lot of theories about like Miguel's role in the whole Spider-Verse and how he got everybody so quickly and all of that. And a lot of people are saying he's going to be like the main villain of the next movie. But it's like, how could you?
Oh, I see.
My thing with it is, how could you see him as the main villain when the Spot hasn't even been dealt with yet?
Yeah, right.
Right.
So unless it's the thing where somehow they deal with Spot in the first like 10 minutes of the next movie, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Miguel is here.
How they do this, though.
You know what though? That would be perfect for the Spot, and let me tell you why. His existence is a joke character, right?
Yeah.
His first appearance in the Spider-Man comic books, all the way back in like the 60s, the Amazing Adventures or whatever it was called. The Spot literally is when Spider-Man first sees him, he can't fight him because he can't stop laughing. Because it's just so funny to him that he's just a bunch of holes.
Oh man.
It isn't until the Spot, just like in this movie, until he starts figuring out his powers and how to actually use them, that he starts beating the shit out of Spider-Man. And then he actually wins the first encounter technically. And then their next encounter, he beats him off of he like slips or something. I can't remember what it was, and then after that, we don't get another appearance from him until like the 90s. And then it's some main villain has been torturing him and using him and experimenting on him and all this other stuff. And then they try to make the Spot a horror character, but every time his appearances have always just been a one-shot thing. He's never gotten a full story. So if they were to do that,
interesting,
and just get rid of him in the first 30 minutes of this next movie and completely switch over, I would be a little upset just because of the amount of buildup in this first one. But I think that would be perfect just for his character.
Sure.
Just from comic book history alone, because it would be funny.
Question, I guess then, speaking of canon events and all that, do we think Miles is going to be able to save his dad?
Nope.
No.
But I don't think it'll be because of the canon events.
Yeah.
I think it'll be because of.
You think Miguel kills him?
I don't think they'll go.
Well, because what if he does save him and then Miguel says no and goes and kills him anyway?
And then Miguel becomes the villain. That'd be a really nice transition there.
You know what? I could see that too. I don't know if they want. I don't know if they're gonna go that dark.
I don't know. That's pretty dark. I mean this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places you can go, and I don't know if they'll go that far. Because I mean, this is still technically. I think it's PG, right? It's PG-13.
PG-13. I thought.
Is it PG-13?
Maybe it is PG.
But I mean, if it's PG, I doubt they'll go that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So going into that point, then with the villains.
Yeah, it's PG.
Oh, all right. Okay.
What do we think about Miles Gonzalo Morales? What do you think about
the alternate version of Miles? That was interesting.
That
kind
was
of caught me off guard, to be honest. It was awesome.
So let me ask you guys a question here. When was the exact moment in the movie where you realized Miles was in the wrong universe?
When they realized it. I had no idea.
I noticed. Well, Brennan, when did you notice it? Because me and you might have been on the same page.
Okay, like, so like when they were initially talking about the teleport thing, where it was like, oh, it like analyzes like the spider's DNA and like, or like, it was like it's something where it's like it's not focusing on like there was some weird kind of throwaway line, but then when he goes and like actually uses the teleporter and is like teleporting away, somehow my mind clocked in that moment. I was like, oh, he's not going back to his universe. He's going to the universe the spider is from, and I immediately clocked it there.
I didn't know until Gwen knew. Let's be real. I was just so engrossed in everything. I wasn't using my brain.
So when I was a little bit behind you, Brennan, because when they were talking about that, I was like, hold on, isn't Miles? Don't we know that his universe is is numbered differently? Like it's not 42, it's something else. And I was like, okay, that's a little weird. But then I noticed for sure because going with the animation styles, once he gets back in that universe, it's like everything is getting darker. And at first they make you think that it's just it's supposed to be for suspense or whatever. But no, it's on purpose. This entire universe is completely animated differently. Even with the whole when he first sees that Uncle Aaron, it's like, okay, wow, yeah, this is not only is this another universe, this is almost an exact opposite universe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So do we think that Miles is a bad Miles?
Oh, the one that's the Prowler?
Yeah. Do you think he's the same type of Prowler? Because
I think he's bad by circumstances. I think he's bad because he has to be.
So,
but I don't think he is actually bad.
Everything that I've seen, all the theories and everything that I've seen have led to him being just a really dark vigilante, basically.
Yeah.
Because the world that he's living in is a world that hasn't had a Spider-Man at all, it seems like.
Right.
And, he's just been living off of the streets pretty much with his uncle.
Yeah.
Not literally, but fighting, doing whatever the Prowler is doing out there. But there was an interesting thing I saw. It was a deleted scene from the first that was going to be in the first movie, but I think they might keep it for the second movie. And it wasn't fully animated. It was just storyboard sketches, but it was animated to the point where, it's basically all that needs to happen is to fill in the colors. But what it is Miles G. Morales is swinging through the city, but he's swinging through with the Prowler stuff. And you see him and his uncle are like swinging together, and they're like using each other as tether points, basically.
Oh, interesting.
For the swinging. And then that scene where he's like giving Rio the money, the scene is them stealing the money from bank robbers that just robbed like a bank down the street or something.
Interesting.
Huh.
Yeah. So, and then there's also another part of that is they steal some medical supplies from there's like a gang that's like trying to steal medical supplies or whatever, and then they steal it and then drop it off to Rio at the hospital she works at.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I really think I really think he's gonna be just a super hard, super rugged, like vigilante, not a full hero, because he's gonna probably admit to killing a couple of villains. I think, at least, just with his facial expressions. But it's just
what
what I would.
So I was kind of right, just bad by circumstance.
What I would absolutely love, and I've seen some other people talk about this online, as well, but like how like the first Spider-Verse movie started off with like a Spider-Man like a recap, like the let's hear this one more time type thing where they go through
oh yeah,
like all the comic book stuff, and then for this movie they did it with Spider-Gwen. I'd love the next movie to start off with that kind of recap for like for the
cool.
Prowler Miles. I would love to see that.
I'm gonna try to find after we're done with this. I'm gonna try to find it and send it to you guys because since you say that, Brennan, that makes me think that scene that I saw might have been exactly that. It might have been that.
Oh, interesting.
And just with because it didn't have any sound. There was no sound. There was no voice work for it. It was literally just the animation.
Huh.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
I'll definitely have to look for that and show it to you because I think you might be onto something with that one.
Interesting.
Sweet.
Interesting.
I hope so.
So I was completely engrossed by this movie. And so when Gwen says, let's go find Miles, and the movie ended, I was so mad. I didn't realize it had been in like 2 hours or whatever, however long the movie was.
No,
I thought it'd been like 20 minutes or like 30 minutes. Like the movie went by so fast.
Yeah.
And I was like, so when it ended, I was so freaking mad. I was like, oh my God, no, you can't do this to me.
It was like the thing for me was I had seen the original plan for the movie. It was kind of come out. They're gonna be 2 movies called Part 1 and Part 2. But then like last year at some point,
show.
Yeah, like last year at some point, the names of the movies were changed to drop the Part 1, Part 2. It was like Across the Spider-Verse and Beyond the Spider-Verse. So my brain forgot that it was ever called Part 1, Part 2 at all.
I think I did the same thing.
So I'm in there, I'm watching the movie, I'm like, it's been going on for a while. I wonder how could they possibly wrap this up in the time they have left? And then like 2 minutes later, it's like the to be continued thing. And my brain, the first thought was like, oh yeah, Part 1, Part 2. Oops.
My brain
did not click until the to be continued.
My brain said throw the popcorn at the screen.
But yeah, there were a lot of people who hated that. I love that. I thought it was done super well. I wish it wasn't as much of a cliffhanger, but it was a pretty satisfying cliffhanger, in my opinion.
I hated it in the minute, but I love it now.
Yeah, it's definitely one of, especially when you, regardless of how long it actually takes, they say that it's supposed to come out in March of next year.
Yeah, I don't buy that at all.
So I buy that just a little bit only because they had already been working on Beyond the Spider-Verse as they were finishing Across the Spider-Verse. So they've already got. I feel like they've got like half of the movie animated, and they just need to do the voice work and then finish the rest of the movie.
See, that's kind of what I thought, but then I saw like a bunch of reports saying that like animation hasn't even like formally started on Beyond the Spider-Verse, and I'm like, if that's true, it took you guys like 4 years to animate this movie,
right?
Why do you think all of a sudden it's only going to be a couple of months here, especially without the voice acting?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. We'll just have to see, especially with the strikes going on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen the only one of those people I follow is Haley Steinfeld. I would imagine Oscar Isaac's part of it. I don't know about the other 2. I don't know. I haven't seen Haley Steinfeld post anything in a while, so.
Here's another interesting thing, real quick. Did y'all know that the alternate Miles is a different voice actor?
I did notice that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, they said that they got a guy that is more ethnically close to Miles, so that he can do more of the Spanish. Because this Miles speaks a lot more Spanish because he's spent most of his life with just his mom.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, but they got a guy, and the two guys, I think it's Jamal. I can't remember his name. The first guy that does our Miles, but the other one he's Dominican.
Fucking kills it. He's fantastic, Miles.
Oh yeah. He's I've been wanting him as Miles since I saw him in Dope, which is a movie about.
Yeah, I've seen them. I've seen stuff about that movie. I've never seen the movie itself.
Yeah, that movie was just that. We got to do a real shit on that soon because that was a good one.
Yeah. I want to start doing real shit again. I need to watch. I have a list of movies I need to watch. That movie the list keeps growing, and I never marked anything off of it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's absolutely fantastic movie. I can't wait for part 2 or Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Yep.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is the last Spider-Verse movie we see, or if they're going to continue at least with just Miles.
I hope
that would be interesting.
I hope they keep it at 3 because this is such a good story to tell. Mm-hmm. But if they were to do another Spider-Verse, I would really hope that they don't. It's not a direct sequel. It's more like a spinoff kind of thing.
Not even like a Spider-Verse. It could just be like we've continued to follow Miles.
Yeah.
And him growing up and stuff like that. I don't know. It really could go anywhere.
We need a Miles show because we got a spectacular. I want a Miles show.
Hey, yeah.
Style and writing style as Spectacular Spider-Man because that show
think they had one for like a
they had It's funny. It's funny we were talking about Childish Gambino because he actually voices Miles in his first animated appearance.
That's right, in Drake Bell's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Have you seen that? That's also another very good show. Drake Bell at the very end of Avengers Assemble, he was in as Spider-Man. Or was it Avengers?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was Avengers Assemble. He was in as Spider-Man, and then
I remember that. That was like the weird like Kang episode, I think, or something like that.
Yes. The last season of Avengers Assemble was bad.
There were only 2 seasons.
No. That's Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes.
Oh.
Avengers Assemble was like the follow-up to that show, which is it's not a good show, not a great show. And then like I think there's like 6 seasons or 7 seasons.
Oh,
second to last season was just Black Panther.
Oh.
And like in Wakanda and stuff. And then they went back to being the Avengers. It was really weird. But now that whole last season was awful.
Huh. Interesting.
But so then the Spider-Man spinoff, Drake Bell's Spider-Man, that was a really good show. They did a Spider-Verse in that was really good.
Okay. And was that one Spectacular Spider-Man or was that a different one?
I don't know. I don't exactly remember what it was called. I know Spectacular Spider-Man is on now. This was a Spider-Man right before. Spider-Man show Drake Bell.
Because I always get all the names of the Spider-Man shows confused.
Ultimate Spider-Man. There were 4 seasons of Ultimate Spider-Man. That was a really good show.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah.
But
unfortunately, Drake Bell sucks. So
that's true.
I can only recommend it so much.
Huh. All right.
But definitely give it a watch if you're looking for something to watch.
Yeah. One more thing that I will note here with across the Spider-Verse is the Lego scene that popped up. I lost my mind at that. I love that scene. That was such a funny scene.
That was perfect.
It was great. It's for all the animation styles they did, it always felt very authentic and true to that style. And for the Lego scene, that was especially true.
Yeah,
that was great.
When Spot just like put his head in and just like looked around and left.
I thought it was really funny. They said that the Lego Spider-Man was one of the best Spider-Man.
Yeah, right. Phenomenal.
How bad can it really be in the Lego verse?
Oh man.
Well, they always. I wonder if they're playing on the joke that the Lego Batman was the best movie. Was one of the best Batman movies.
That would be funny too. Yeah,
I think that's what they're playing really on. Maybe. Because that's what I've heard. It was like a fantastic Batman movie.
Yeah.
Oh,
I still haven't watched it. I need to.
What it could also be is do you know like the background of who it was who animated that whole Lego scene?
No, I think you may have told me, but I don't know.
So there was, and I kid you not, there was like a 14-year-old kid who would do like Lego stuff on like YouTube and like loved the Spider-Verse stuff, and I think did like Lego versions of of some scenes for like the first Spider-Verse movie, and then when the Across the Spider-Verse trailer dropped, made a Lego version of that trailer as well, and like this would have been like I guess that the whole work that he did there would have been like uh prior to him doing the trailer, but he always loved doing like Lego animation stuff, and because of what he did for like just as a fan for in the Spider-Verse, they reached out to him and they were like, "Hey, do you want to basically animate a scene for Across the Spider-Verse just by yourself here?" And he said, "Absolutely." So that whole scene was animated just by a 14-year-old kid, which is awesome because that kid rocks. Because that scene looked incredible.
Yeah, it did. It looked that wow. That's crazy that one person did all of that, and it's just a kid.
Yep. Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
That's cool. That's really cool of them.
Yep. Like that's also what I think when they were like, "Oh, like you're one of like our best here." Like, I also think that could have been also just like an indirect compliment here for that like 14-year-old kid who did that. Then, because I mean,
that's nice. Yeah.
I mean, like you're kidding me. That was superb.
Yeah, it was perfect.
So, anything else of note for this movie? I mean, I'm sure we could rave about this movie for days.
I also loved the Cat's Spider-Man and the like
the what Spider-Man?
The cat spider.
The cat who during the whole chase scene had like a hairball spider web. That was great. And then like the cowboy Spider-Man and like the horse with the mask. That was fantastic.
Oh man.
Oh, we didn't even talk about Spider-Woman this entire time. Who was like a pretty integral part to like the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was I really liked so in the comics, Jessica Drew is a horrible person.
Is she?
Oh yeah.
She's not like super horrible, but like nobody really likes her.
Sure.
At least in the fan base, from what I could tell, nobody really liked her as a female Spider-Woman, and her failure as a Spider-Woman is what led to like Gwen Stacy becoming a Spider-Woman and all of that. But I'm so glad that they didn't use that version of her in this movie, and you instead just used this version because it just made her feel more, I don't know, more relatable, I guess. Just with her, because her attitude just seemed more. It made more sense because the attitude that Jessica Drew in the comics has is like, why are you such a bitch?
Well, apparently in the comics, she gets her powers through Hydra and her father, who worked for Hydra.
Oh, interesting.
So maybe that's why she sucks. But
I will also say, one more note from me. I absolutely love that Peter B. Parker got like a happy ending, and like there's Mayday and all of that. Like I I don't know like directly here, but I know from hearing things on like online that like in the comics it's like a complicated relationship with all of that, and apparently in the comics they don't want him to end up like happy here at all. So I'm glad that he got kind of a happy ending here.
Well, and there was Spider-Man India, which also played a. Well, he is the whole
Love
reason
that character.
There's and I think, don't quote me on this. I believe the um the person who voiced him was Dopender from.
He was, yeah.
Yes, yes.
He was. They actually, I loved their inclusion of that, of just the Indian Spider-Man also, because of the fact that they had a whole writing room just for cultural what is it, accuracy.
Uh-huh.
They were trying to
Sweet.
make sure they got everything right, and they wanted to make sure that it wasn't like racially insensitive or anything like that.
Right.
And then uh he actually got to improvise like half of his lines.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I wonder if he did that as Dopender. Because like I mean like you said, Brennan, for Deadpool, like half of his lines are like improvised. I wonder if that also happened with other characters throughout that movie.
I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised.
I really like that they included Ben Riley. He's like one of my favorite Spider people for some reason.
That's so funny.
Because he's just like, but I liked how he was like depressed the entire movie.
That's how he is in the comics, though.
I know, but it was just interesting. Maybe it's because I really like the way they portrayed him in the Ultimate Spider-Man show.
Yeah, he was like extra broody in that too.
Yeah. Yeah, he was super broody in this movie, but I'm glad that they included him.
Yeah.
Mayday, Spider
I think
Cat.
his
Spider
animation
Rex.
style is one of my favorites.
Who?
Ben Riley. I think
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
just from that era of comics, while the writing was so bad from back then, the
Right.
art style was so vibrant and popping,
Oh yeah.
just exaggerated.
He's got a cool costume too.
Yeah.
It's like somewhere in between the regular Spider-Man and Spider-Punk.
Yeah. A little. Yeah. Yeah.
There was Spider Rex,
Yeah. That
Mhm.
was funny
Peter parked
too.
car, which was weird. He was there. Oh,
Yeah.
the Cowboy Spider-Man.
Yeah,
How his horse had a mask.
That's exactly who I was talking about earlier here.
The mask.
Love that one.
Why did your horse have a mask?
So they don't
Oh,
see.
man.
So they don't know his secret identity.
Yeah, but overall here, fantastic movie. I am very excited to see what they do next. I hope they treat their animators better for the next movie here, because like although this movie was born out of a lot of love for all the characters and the story instead of like the standard corporate greed motives that I feel a lot of other stuff is born out of these days. It's not like they still treated their animators like horribly. So
Yeah.
I hope they don't do that for the next one.
Yeah.
Like you guys can take the time you need, give your animators some breaks here. We will be here whenever the movie comes out. I promise you.
Yeah, I don't mind waiting for this. Like,
yeah,
that's something like we've made a big show of for the whole MCU debacle, is that we're having to wait this long for whatever. But like, I think that's because we're unsatisfied with all their work. I'm perfectly satisfied with how this ended, even if it was a cliffhanger.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm good to wait.
Yep.
Take all the time you need.
Especially
don't push it out in March and make it bad.
Right. Because
yeah,
that was the main fear I had at first, because I was like, wow, that's kind of soon, ain't it?
Yeah.
Like, how are you gonna do that? But it would be cool to see it that soon. But at the same time, like you said, it's like that's really pushing it, considering how long the first movie took.
Right. And who knows now? And like we said, with the whole writers, not only the writers but the actors strike. I mean, who knows when we get it? Just when we get it, I want it to live up to this movie. At the very least, I mean, it's gonna be tough. At least live up to the first movie.
Yeah.
Not that that's a low bar either. I mean, that's really freaking high bar. So, I don't think we should get into Secret Invasion. I think we should just go ahead and let it finish, because it's done tomorrow, apparently.
Yeah,
so
let's just hold it. Let's
we'll
just
save
have
that for next time.
Yeah, just one episode where we go over like all of it.
The entire thing, yeah.
Well, yeah, because I guess we haven't
haven't touched it, no.
Yeah, okay. Then yeah, we'll just save it and we'll go over
I haven't even watched anything past the second episode, so
neither have I. Which is funny because I really liked the first 2 episodes, but I just
I'm interested to see how it ends.
How busy I've been at work, just haven't had the time.
Okay,
rather, I haven't made the time. I think that's more of an accurate saying.
Yeah. Okay.
So
in that case, seems to have been wrapped up.
Yep.
Pretty nicely here.
Yeah. So if you guys would like to support us, go ahead and click that subscribe button wherever you're listening to or watching to this. Go subscribe to Brennan. At Not Brennan, go subscribe to me at WolfGator Entertainment. Someone send help to RJ. He's in space.
The situation is no longer dire, so don't stress, guys. But it would be nice to come home.
So yeah, and if you want to follow him on social media, I don't know if he's allowed to have that up there, but it's RJ Broome on stuff.
Yes, sir.
So
on pretty much everything.
Yeah. So with that, see you guys next time. Hopefully, we'll get back to the 2-week schedule. If not, sorry.
Maybe.
We'll see what happens.
And maybe more real shit coming. So peace out, guys.
Peace out.